Hello, everybody. Welcome to Talk About House. I'm Todd.
I'm Juana.
Okay, first of all, we apologize for not putting out a video yesterday.
That was his fault.
Okay. You might notice we're a little sunburned.
Yeah. Still his fault.
Okay. We went on a secret reconnaissance mission.
Yes.
We went snorkeling in Tahiti.
Yeah.
We got, believe it or not, literally flew to Tahiti, went snorkeling, flew back. How much sleep have we had in the last 36 hours?
Probably about 6 hours.
Definitely not 6 hours. 36 hours?
Feels like it. Feels like it right now.
Maybe 48 hours. 48 hours had 6 hours sleep. Okay. We're not going to talk about that. We were actually in Tahiti. Oh my God. Okay. Fortunately, we weren't there long enough to really do anything except for go snorkeling. All right. So what we're going to talk about today is real estate. Imagine that. And we've had this theory about part of the reason homes are, people always say, well, Todd, in 1950, you could buy a home for way less money. Well, sure, but not, what was a house like in 1950, Juana?
Well, so it was very simple, functional, right? It had 2 or 3 bedrooms. It had 1 bathroom. It had a kitchen. Maybe it had a carport. If it was really special, maybe it even had a 1-car garage, but generally just had a carport. Did not have air conditioning. Probably didn't have central heat. And had single pane windows, very much 4 walls and a roof.
Yeah, it was probably 1,100 square feet maybe, and it was a square.
Right.
The size of the house was a square. If you look, very common in the Midwest.
Or a rectangle.
It could be a rectangle. They got real fancy in California. It was a rectangle, but then the garage stuck off it, so it looked like an L, but it was still a rectangle. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to talk about the changes in homes since the 70s to give you an idea of, because remember, these changes are probably going to keep happening. We're going to keep seeing some type of change in housing.
Right. So, look, it's normal for things to evolve, and housing has evolved. Todd's got some really cool charts, so hang in there. They're kind of confusing, so you have to kind of actually listen to what he's telling you. These charts are telling you, because when I first looked at them, I kind of did one of these head tilts, but then it kind of clicked. So hang tight, and we'll walk you through these charts, and it'll be interesting.
Okay, so it's from an article, The Rise of the McMansion. 11 charts show just how much bigger and fancier American houses have gotten since the 1970s. Now, there's a couple weeks of data. We're going to hit the charts. All right, so here's the first. And once again, I apologize if we slur our speech or something because we haven't slept.
No, we'll be good.
Okay,
Keep
all right. U.S. homes are becoming larger and more extravagant. Census Bureau data shows. That's Census Bureau. More 4-bedroom homes are being built. Nearly all are being constructed with air conditioning. Much different than the house I grew up in as a kid. No AC, much smaller. Probably same for you, right?
Yep.
Do you have AC in Romania when you were a kid?
No.
No AC in Romania?
No.
Okay. Goldman Sachs says it expects home prices to remain elevated, rise by 3.5% in 2024. I don't even know why that was in here. That was in the article, but this is about, the houses themselves.
Right. So let's get to the houses. This is the good stuff. The charts.
Okay, the charts. Okay, this came from Census Bureau. It was in an article by Business Insider. All right. So here's the first chart. Now, before we talk about the chart, I'm going to explain what these charts are. So each chart you see, you won't have to figure out. Okay. This is by year, the new homes that were built that year. This is not all the housing market or homes that were for sale. It was what builders built in a specific year.
Right. So this is all new construction.
It's all new construction. So it just goes to show how, because if you did the whole housing market, it doesn't change very much, because you have to, if we only add 0.5% of homes to housing market, any change in there doesn't change the makeup of homes significantly. All right. So if you look at any piece of this vertically, it's just that year. So 2005, 2006, all the way to the left is probably 1973 or 4 probably. Okay, the blue is homes with 1 or 2 bedrooms, or maybe 0 bedrooms. I guess in theory you could have no bedrooms. And then the 3 bedrooms, which is that pinkish color, and then yellow, which is 4 or more bedrooms. So what this shows here is the trend that we did have a spike in the 80s of 1 and 2 bedrooms. probably one of, what do you think about that spike? Remember, what were interest rates in 1982?
Oh, goodness, 1982, they were probably right around 18%.
18%. They were somewhere up there in the mid to high teens. They're probably building smaller houses,
They were
so
very
people could
generous,
afford them, and they probably weren't putting 3 or 4 bedrooms in them. They were, I mean, you could see there was a substantial rise. Only 10% of the houses in the 70s were 1 or 2 bedrooms, and all of a sudden it was over 20%. So they more than doubled for a few years.
Yes, I mean the homes that I lived in the 80s and all the way through the 80s were all 2-bedroom homes. So some were duplexes, some were townhouses, some were single family, but they were all 2-bedroom homes.
Okay. This just, well, we go all the way to the right here, you get more current data. You could see this trend to building less of the 1 and 2 bedrooms, even a little less 3 bedrooms. And that this is probably the highest year of 4 bedrooms that we've ever built if you look historically.
Right.
What do you think some of the reasons are for that?
So, we've talked about this before. It used to be that the average square foot per person was somewhere like around 270 square feet per person, and now it's like more like 950 square feet per person. Yep. So we like bigger homes, we like more space, we like to have bigger kitchens, we like to have more bathrooms, we like to have guest rooms, offices, dens. We like to have all kinds of space that goes beyond just the basic living space and bedroom space.
Okay. Yeah, that's pretty much the reason. The other thing, too, is keep in mind that a lot of people work from home. That's a new thing with tech and the way the jobs are now. And so people sometimes have home offices, and they use a bedroom for that a lot of times.
Right, but our families function differently, right? Because when you and I were kids, it was sun up to sundown. We were not even allowed in the house. Okay, we were supposed to be outside. Right. And so that's not the case with kids today. Kids today are inside. They're kind of like inside cats, right? So they don't go outside very much. So you do need the space for these members of the family that now all of a sudden require indoor space for their living space during the day, where you and I would have been out in the neighborhood, playgrounds, parks, wherever. These kids are indoors doing indoor things, and that requires space.
The biggest house I ever lived in, ever, was 1,600 square feet, and it was only because we took our house and put an addition on the back. But most houses we lived in were 1,300 square feet, and they were 3 bedrooms. I had siblings that were older, and there was times I lived in the same room with a sibling. Everyone didn't have their own room. Kids today, it seems like people tend to want their kids to have their own room for whatever reason.
Right. It's a different culture.
Okay, let's go back to number of bathrooms. Now you can definitely see that almost no homes have 1.5 bathrooms or less. Looks like a couple percent. Remember, this chart only goes to the 80s. If this chart were to go back to the 50s, that bottom, that pinkish color, would be much larger.
Right.
I definitely lived in houses as a kid where we had a single bathroom, central bathroom for the whole house.
Absolutely.
And then you can see the 2.5, 3 baths or more, kind of extravagant to have 3 bathrooms in a house. But obviously, since 2015, that's probably 40% of all houses have had 3 or more baths.
Right.
And this doesn't mean 2.5 baths. This is 3 baths or more. Because if you think about it this way, over 60% of all houses are at least 2.5 baths. And this is that were built that year.
Right.
So that's pretty interesting. I don't know why they don't have data that goes further back, because some of the data goes back to the 70s. Would be really cool to see data that goes back further, but a lot of us don't need it because we live there. We remember what houses look like. If you lived in a house that was 2,000 square feet, like if I went to a friend's house, their house was 2,000 square feet, they were rich people.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm not talking, they were substantially, wealth. They were like, you did a professional job.
Right.
You weren't just a worker or whatever.
Okay, but to kind of give you a little bit of perspective, how many of you remember the Brady Bunch? Okay, the Brady Bunch probably had about a 2,500 square foot house.
Yeah, he was an architect.
Okay, and how did the kids live? Do you remember? Well, there were 3 girls living in one room. There were 3 boys in one room. So this was very typical. It's been an evolution both in housing and in culture for us to have, like Todd said, for our children to all have their own room, their own bathroom, their own space. It's just been an evolution. That's not the way it's always been.
Well, they had a housekeeper who lived there.
That's right.
She had a room downstairs. And then they had the common rooms that were large.
Right.
The big downstairs, that big living room, and the kitchen area and all the dining area.
And then he had, the dad had an office.
Oh, he had an office downstairs
right.
because he was an architect, right?
That's right.
And then there were just the 3 bedrooms upstairs.
Yep.
And actually, didn't the kids all share a bathroom?
They did.
They all share, because they would fight over the bathroom.
Because remember, upstairs there were 3 bedrooms, the girls' room, the boys' room, and the parents' room. The parents had their own bathroom, and then the kids, 6 kids. Wrap your head around this. 6 kids shared 1 bathroom.
Yeah.
Chaos.
Okay. Here's the next one, number of floors. What's interesting about this is you're probably looking at this, it hasn't changed very much. Okay. This only goes to 2009. If this chart in Vegas went back to, say, the 60s, 70s, almost all homes, predominantly 75% of all homes in Vegas, were single story.
Right. So there was a reason for that, right?
Yes.
Okay. So there were 2 reasons, actually. One was that land was not that expensive.
Yep.
And 2 was because not everybody had air conditioning. And air conditioning was really important. If you have a 2-story home and Vegas gets really hot, then the upstairs would be completely unbearable. So because of that, air conditioning was not as efficient. It wasn't as widespread. So that was a lot of the reason why you had single-family homes. The more air conditioning became more affordable and more homes had it, the more builders were able to put up 2-story homes. And at the same time, Las Vegas grew, land became more expensive, so 2-story homes also became more readily available.
It was also more difficult to build a 2-story home. We didn't need to, really. Why would you build a 2-story home when you had a 7,000 square foot lot? You could build
Right.
And homes weren't that big, so you really didn't need to build a 2-story home. So, and I remember, I think it was Jerry, there were a lot of celebrities that lived here in town, and Jerry Lewis lived here, of course, for probably 40 years until he passed away. He was here, and his house was right over in the Rancho Circle area, and it wasn't in a gated area. You could see his house, but it was a 1-story. But it was a beautiful 1-story. You could tell it had like the high ceilings and everything, which would help, of course, with the heat in the summer. But he had a 1-story.
Right.
So yeah, it's very common. So this chart doesn't really show that much stuff. This is an interesting median area in square feet. Now remember, this is not all houses. There were only houses that were built that year. So if you were buying a house in 1975, this 1,600 square foot house was much larger than all the existing inventory of homes, because the existing inventory of homes were still these 1,000, 1,100, 1,200, maybe 1,300 square foot homes. You could see that dropped again in the early 80s because they probably were building small houses because interest rates. They were trying to keep homes affordable. And then this thing just took off. So up to even past 2015, it was 2,500 square foot for a new built home, which is one of the reasons homes are more expensive. They're actually larger.
Right.
Right? So I thought this was pretty interesting too.
So another reason why homes are larger, like I said, we talked about air conditioning, we talked about size, we talked about the construction type. So we have all kinds of different construction types too. So that has a lot to do with it. So we'll get into that in a minute.
Okay. Garages and carports. This is interesting. I'll just leave this up. We'll talk about it. No garage or carport. It surprises me that we today still don't build garages or carports. I know I've seen some condos that don't have them, where you buy the condo but you don't have a garage or a carport. You just have outdoor parking. There are probably some, like in Vegas, you got to have a garage because it's hot, or in a really cold area, you probably got to have one because your car will freeze if you leave it outside. And this is another one where if you went back far enough, you would see a lot of houses didn't have a garage, or matter of fact, the house my grandma lived in didn't have a garage or carport. It was an extremely small house. It was a 2-bedroom, 800 square foot house. And my dad built her a carport, built it for her to park her car under. She used to park it just on the side of the house. She just had gravel. I would just park in the dirt next to the house. But today, they don't do that. Everyone's got garages. Here's another interesting: air conditioning. Red is with air conditioning, green is without. Almost no houses today don't have air conditioning. Here's another interesting thing. So we've been to San Diego quite a bit. I lived in San Diego for 10 years when I was a kid. House did not have AC in San Diego, right? Houses built probably in the 50s, the house we lived in. We lived on base. Base housing didn't have air conditioning. We went even to a place in Hawaii where there were cabins on the beach. We did a video, and this was back in August. We did a market update on the beach. Our cabin had air conditioning, but the cabins like on the other side of the street or further down didn't have air conditioning. So because those things were probably built in the 40s. So they didn't all have, and the air conditioning were add-ons. They were like units they stuck on and they built it in later. I'm shocked there's still some, but it looks like about 95% of everything built today has air AC, right? Types of heating. Do you remember when you first came to the U.S., you were in kind of remote areas. Do you even have a clue what kind of heat they used?
So we actually had, there was a home that we rented, and that had electric heat, and it was really expensive.
Sure.
And then there was another one that we rented, and that one had gas heat.
Okay.
And that was a little bit better. But I think most homes today, most of us have gas heat.
Okay. So this is type of heating system. So it's got forced air furnace, heat pump, and other types. You can see all houses today that are heat pump or forced air furnace. But this is types of heating. So the bottom one is gas. That's what I think most people have, it would seem like today. But you can see back in the 70s, most people actually had, and a lot of people still do have electric heat in the homes. And then there's still some that have oil or other type. Now remember, all gas does not mean, some of the gas, like if you're in Mexico and you have gas, chances are a truck drives and they fill up a bottle outside, like a tank.
A propane, yeah.
Propane
so
underground.
For example, like if you live at Lake Tahoe, you'll have a propane tank most likely. You will not have gas heat you won't have gas that you have a gas meter and that sort of thing, right? You'll have a propane tank, and that's pretty common, particularly in places like places that are more remote, like Lake Tahoe, or places in the South. They're a lot like that. So it just depends on where you live. If it's rural, you're more likely to have a propane tank than you are gas heat from the gas company. If you're in the metropolitan area, you're more likely to have gas heat from a gas company.
Number of fireplaces. This is really, okay, 2 or more fireplaces generally are going to either be larger homes or they're going to be homes that actually require fireplaces. Cabins, rural areas where you're actually going to take wood, throw it in there, and keep the house warm. We did live in a place that it did have central heating, but it also had this heatilating system where we would throw wood in. We would buy wood, and we would just throw it in the thing and light it, and then we'd close the doors, and then it would circulate the air from the heat. And you would walk outside and look at the other houses in the winter when it was cold, and you'd see, this was not in the this was in the state of Washington, and you'd see the smoke coming out of everybody's chimneys because they had their fireplaces going.
Right. So fireplaces are no longer a thing that we need to heat our homes for the most part. They are a decorator item, an aesthetic, and they are, I think, somewhat falling out of vogue, partly because they're not that functional anymore. So we see a lot of fireplaces that are kind of faux fireplaces, right, that have the pretty rocks and the pretty lights, and maybe that they're gas, or maybe they're not even gas, maybe they're electric and they just have the projected flames or whatever. So you see a lot of that, and so they become more of a decorator item than a functional item.
This is exterior wall material. Brick, wood, stucco, vinyl. Now, what's interesting here, Vegas, what do you think number one would be? What do most people have here?
So for us, it's stucco.
Stucco, right. Brick is not really practical, and stucco is easier for our climate.
Right.
Stucco doesn't work in places where it's extremely cold for long periods of time. You need brick. So when I was an airline pilot and I was living up in Chicago, all the houses, everyone had brick houses. Now, there were parts of the house that maybe had siding on them, but the houses were predominantly, and you would actually see houses where it looked like the whole thing was brick.
Right.
The whole thing was brick. Wood, certainly not. You wouldn't have that in a super cold climate. You wouldn't have that in a super warm climate either. So, yeah, I thought this was pretty interesting. But you could see that there definitely been some changes. The biggest one is that vinyl or fiber cement are growing in types of siding for houses.
Right. So the reason those have become more popular is because of cost, and particularly cost of maintenance. They're really easy to maintain because all you got to do is take the hose to them, and they come clean. You don't have to paint them. They also provide You're also able to insulate your home with them because you can put backing on them and stuff. So all kinds of reasons why those are popular. I think the number one reason why they're popular is because they are easy to maintain.
Yeah. Okay, this next one, type of foundation. Now, what this means is, do you have a basement, a crawl space, or a slab?
Right.
So peak at the bottom is full or partial basement. Now, it looks like about 20% in the U.S. have it. Slab is most common. And then a crawl space, there are areas where you can't physically put the house right on the ground for whatever reason. It's better to actually have it elevated. In Vegas, how many houses have you been in is a percentage with a full basement?
Very few. I mean, I don't even know that if that's an actual percent.
Right, it's super small.
Very small. So crawl spaces, like Todd said, it has to do with with climate more than anything else, and having to do with usually plumbing, and that's where they put your plumbing and they insulate it and that kind of thing. So that's usually the reason why you have a crawl space.
Yeah. Of the 3,000 homes we've sold plus, 10 basements maybe, if that.
If that, I don't even know that we had, and not real basements, not
Right.
like they have in the Midwest.
Right.
These are kind of faux basements, as I call them. They're
It's on a hill, so that one of the
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, they're not real basements, and the ones that are real basements, they are simply because they want to increase the living square footage. So I was recently in one that had a real basement, and in the real basement they had a full basketball court.
Okay, but this was probably what was the price range of the house?
Probably about 10 million.
Okay, yeah, okay.
So I mean, so you do see that.
Yeah.
There's a reason for that. It's not like it is in the Midwest where it's, you need a basement because maybe for inclement weather or for storage or that sort of thing. It's different.
Yeah. Okay. So that's all the slides. What do you think that for you is the most interesting about this? And then what if you're watching from somewhere else, let us know what the common thing is there. Like, do people have 2-story houses? Is it 1-story houses? Or are people on, I've talked to people who said, oh, everywhere they live, everybody's on an acre because they live in some rural area and no one's allowed to build anything that's less than an acre.
Right. So I think to me the most interesting thing is to look at this and kind of overlap social trends.
Yeah.
Because you can see the social trends correlate with the change in housing. So I think that's what was interesting to me. How about you?
I think it's just the natural, homes are getting bigger. They're getting more modern because more have air conditioning. Like, buying a house in San Diego and then getting AC in it, when in the 1950s there were probably 0 houses that had air conditioner, and somehow people did not all die, right? But now everyone has to have AC in these houses, and you spend time in San Diego, most of the year you don't need it. You only really need it maybe for, honestly, a few weeks. As a matter of fact, I bought a brand new house in Colorado in 1996, no AC. We had a heater, but we did not have an AC. And all we did was on those really hot days. Now the house was 6,600 feet above sea level, so it was pretty high. So that it would get into like the low 90s at times. It was super dry climate, and at night we just opened the windows.
So when I lived in Reno, I bought a house in 1990, and it was brand new construction, and AC was an option.
An option.
And I did spring for the option because I'm that kind of girl that has to spring for options.
Yeah.
I sprung for the AC. I sprung for the fireplace. That was an option.
Yeah.
I sprung for all kinds of things.
Nice.
So, and so the AC was, I want to say, this is like 1990. And in 1990, I think it was like $5,000.
Yeah.
It's a lot of money.
Yeah.
And this was in Reno, and I have to tell you that in the early 1990s, when I lived in this house, I think we ran the air conditioner for maybe 3 or 4 weeks a year.
Right, that's funny, but you had it.
But I had it.
Yeah.
I had it, and I had to have it because it's one of those things I had to have. Like I had to have the fireplace. But yeah, so I think it's interesting. Like I said, those social changes and how they illustrate, at the same time our changes in housing and that sort of thing. I think it's interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, so did you have fun? Were the charts cool? Were they kind of confusing? Did you like them? What was your favorite chart? And tell us about your experience with housing over time. We love hearing your real estate stories, so please leave them in the comments. Remember to like the video, subscribe, hit the notification bell, share the video, and we will put out another awesome video. And if you hit the subscribe and the notification buttons, you will be notified when we put out the next awesome video.
They know how YouTube works.
Yeah, well, I'm trying here. All right, so help us grow the channel and share the video, and we'll see you on the next video. Bye.
Bye.